This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Helping Kim Bryant from 1979.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Joseph Lombardo.
It's a little weird when somebody introduces you that way, huh? Especially when they have that accent. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I usually try to start these events off, or any event in general, with a funny anecdote. And so typical, I go outside into the lobby here, and there's a couple members of the MAC committee out there surveying the donuts. And they're trying to convince me to consume some so they feel better about their consumption. And then I had a young female captain, Michelle Tavares, called me a drug pusher. I'm telling the story, not you. So, look, she's got her pen out, gonna take some notes. A rookie captain, there you go. There you go, I like it. So, welcome everybody, State of the Department for 2022. And we're gonna get through, and I'm gonna try and inform you all the successes. I won't have the ability to inform you about all the successes from 2021. There was numerous, but there was also a lot of angst, a lot of issues in 2021, in particular to crime and COVID and everything that goes along with what we do as a profession. But more importantly, what is it going to look like for us in 2022? And what are the threats? What do we need to be concerned with? And how is this department going to continue to be successful as we have been since I've been a police officer here? And then, unfortunately, fortunately, depends on how you look at it, this will be my last one. This will be my last one. And we're going to talk about that. But before I get into the nuts and bolts, there's a couple folks here I want to recognize, and that's the PPA and their representation. I think they're all, as typical, they're in the back surveying the crowd and figure out how I'm violating people's rights and taking notes, right? So Steve Gramis, Steve, thanks for being here and having your crew here. I appreciate that. And then members of the PMSA, are you here today? Oh, there you are, our new president and our vice president. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate that. And then P-Pace, Carla, you here? I am. Okay. See, they're up front, Steve. See that? They don't hide in the back and take pot shots at me. So, and then I mentioned already the MAC board. So raise your hands there. Dora, Ujahid, thanks for being here. Oh, all the way in the back, okay. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And then I wanted to make sure, is Julie Craig here? Hi, Julie. Why are you sitting by yourself? You know why she's by herself? Because she's in charge of the Citizens Review Board. She's got no friends over there. So I'm just messing with you, Julie. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So, state of the department, let's get going. And in typical fashion, in representing a law enforcement agency, I got to get a little rhythm going here because this year we have a monitor up here which will probably make it easier for me. We always kick off, especially in law enforcement, talking about violent crime. What has been my priority since I've been your sheriff? First and foremost has been violent crime. And why is that? Because it affects everything we do in our community, everything, our quality of life, how we look at our community, our sense of well-being, our safety for our families, and everything we do revolves around crime and violent crime, to include traffic more often than not. So it's important that we lead off with what we are attempting to do, what we have done in addressing that particular issue. So $20. For those you may not know, May of 2020, what happened? George Floyd, right? George Floyd. And that incident occurred over what was believed to be a fictitious $20 bill. Ended up with a confrontation with police, and we all know the results of that confrontation. And as a result of that, our profession changed. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it changed. For some good reasons, some bad reasons, everything you could imagine. But we went through a difficult learning curve back in 2020 as of May and moving forward. But how did that affect violent crime? I thought we were going to talk about 21 first and then going into 22. Well, we were doing really good, folks. We were doing really good until about May of 2020. And that's when the wheels came off. And how we were perceived by the community, how we interacted with the community, and everything that goes along with it changed in our dynamic. And it changed when we went home and talked to our kids. It changed when we went home and talked to our family. It changed when we went to church and talked to what was going on there and people's fear as a result of the angst and the protests and everything that went along with it. But in Las Vegas, I'm proud to say it was a little bit different. I'm proud to say it was a little bit different than it was in the rest of the United States, and the fact that how we addressed it, how we had moved forward, and all the history that we had on board prior to George Floyd. And we're going to talk about that. But it had a definite influence on violent crime. All the angst, people were releasing their frustration as a result of that. Then you move forward into March of 21. What happened? Pandemic. How come she has all the answers and none of you guys do? So, the pandemic, right? Essential, non-essential. How are we looked at as far as responding to calls? How do we interact continually with the community? How do we keep those robust community efforts moving forward in the middle of the pandemic, in the fear of our own workforce and going out and doing our job? Day one, folks, I'm preaching to the choir, we had to go to work. It was very difficult for me as the head of the agency and for these guys up here in the front and executive staff dealing with the nuances of that, dealing with the thought in the back of our mind that we were putting our folks in harm's way, while other folks got to sit at home and evaluated their situation from the comfort of their four walls of their house. So we had to get through that and deal with an increase in violent crime. And what we did was we kept trudging forward, right? As a workforce, we did a fantastic job in dealing with that, even though the numbers probably didn't say so. So I had the luxury of looking through from 2016 through 2021, and all the way through 20, we had a decrease in crime year over year, specifically violent crime. You know, it's 2016, 5%, 2017, 2.5%, 2018, 5%, 2019, 4%, 2020, 13%. And that was all in the first 6 months. Because as I mentioned, in those next 6 months, the tide started to change in how we were dealing with that. 2021, up 5%. What the hell happened? Did we all decide to go home and just sit there and forget about doing our jobs and not paying attention? No, that's not what occurred. The world changed, society changed, the perception of crime changed, how people perpetuate their crime, and the attitudes towards criminals. And I'm gonna talk about all those nuances as we go through this presentation today. And I'm very confident we're gonna continue to be successful. But I don't wanna leave this violent crime page without letting you know we were successful. We had a decrease of 11% in violent crime. We got our butt kicked in homicides, and there's reasons behind that. But in totality, we did a fantastic job. If you look across the United States, major city chiefs associations, which there's approximately 50, double-digit increases in crime across the board. We had single-digit increase in crime in totality across the board. And we need to be very proud of that, because what we're doing and all the history and how we're addressing and keeping everything at the forefront and priority and what we need to do as a law enforcement agency bared fruit. I don't want anybody to lose sight of that. Homicides. Yeah, we got our butt kicked last year. Increase of 49%. That's a big number. That's an individual life associated with every one of those increases. But we still did a good job. Is Ray here? Ray's folks, the back of the room. Everybody know Ray Spencer, Lieutenant Spencer? The highest solvability in homicides, I would say, in the United States. Would you say that, Ray? So I believe last year was 91%. Previous year, I think it was 93. And it's bittersweet for me a little bit, because it's sweet in that I have to buy everybody in the damn homicide section a steak dinner if they were 95% or plus. And they did that for about a week last year. But I told them they had to sustain it. That's how I got out of it. And I said it was at the end of the year. But, I say it in jest, but it's very important for people to realize that. And why do I make it such an important part of what we do? Why do you make it such an important part? Because it revolves in everything we do in law enforcement. If we have a laissez-faire attitude on solvability, what is the community going to think of us? Where's the trust associated with what we do as a profession going to go? And what are the crooks going to think? They think they have free will. They think they can do whatever they want to do in perpetuating what they do. As a result of that, it starts right there. The worst crime that you can have in homicide, and you have eyes on it, and we're doing something about it. We're not ignoring it, and as a result, we're being successful. Unfortunately, the increase was significant, and I anticipate we're going to manage that as we move forward into 2022. Hold on. Property crime. That's a pretty cool picture, huh? Any ideas what we did in 21? We failed. 11% increase. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we move forward. But more importantly, I think we lost our vision, or we didn't have our eye on the ball in some aspects of that. What were the driving forces associated with property crime? 411As, increase of 22%. Larceny itself, increase of 8% in year-over-year comparison. And how are we going to get our hands wrapped around that? We can't ignore it. Violent crime is always going to continue to be our priority, but quality of life creeped its way into it last year, right? That was our second priority, and quality of life is property crimes, to include burglaries, home invasions, anything that has a direct effect or personal effect on you that make you feel like you've been violated. And we have to keep that perspective. We have to let the victims know we feel their pain, and it's just not as simple as saying, oh, it's a property crime, we'll just move on, and hopefully we'll figure it out as we go forward. We got to prioritize it. Head of the agency standing up here talking to you, property crimes needs to become a priority as equal to violent crime for us to keep our hands on the pulse of what we're doing as a community. Why is stolen vehicles such a key point? The pandemic, the supply chain, the anxiety, opening up the economy, people wanting to get back to work, they're trying to figure out their transportation needs. There's a whole plethora of reasons behind that, but we need to be aware of that and ensure that we have good partnerships with our community members to help us in that endeavor. I anticipate we're going to be successful moving forward. Fatal accidents. Another one that is a pandemic, I'll use that word, systemic problem. Another one where we got our butt kicked last year. I wouldn't say that. No, we got slapped around a little bit. but we had an increase in fatal accidents. Anybody have any idea how much? Huh?
It was 104 last year, 149 last year.
And the reason why I'm asking the crowd, he's correct. He better be correct. He's a damn captain of it. But the reason why I asked that crowd that question, because you need to know. You need to know, everybody needs to know what our priorities are here and how we're going to be successful fighting it into the future. People need to know so we can prioritize, we can talk to our troops about it, be concerned about it. Maybe we need to increase our traffic enforcement and everything that goes along with it. But it's important. We had an 8% increase in fatal accidents. 14-year high for the state of Nevada. 14-year high across the state increase in fatal accidents to the tune of 20% for the state. We have to be aware of that so we can do something about it. You have to be able to measure it in order to do something about it. And now that you are aware, we can put solutions in place to address it. That's a big number. That's an innocent, usually 99% of the time, usually unaware person. All of a sudden, they lose their life as a result of somebody else's action that they weren't even intended to be involved in. They didn't force the issue. Wrong place at the wrong time. That's why it becomes such an important issue. And traffic is an issue for all of us. Everybody in the community. When we go out into the community and we talk to folks, you know, all the captains and the chiefs and the executive staff and the lieutenants and the sergeants, and we do our first Tuesdays and we talk to folks, what is the number one issue they bring up? Is it homicides? No, because it's very rare that anybody in their life or in their entire life or anybody they know is going to be involved in a homicide. But they're going to be involved in either a traffic accident or a traffic issue on a daily basis. So we have to ensure that's a priority. I'm mentioning a lot of priorities today, folks, but we just have to balance it, and that's the nature of the beast of the business we're in. Here's something that is having a detrimental effect on us in this space, and the press is here, and I'm glad they're here so they can hear it directly out of my mouth. 173,000. You know what that number is? Anybody? Citations. Last 2 years, pandemic, courts being closed. Why do we give out citations? Why do people receive citations for traffic violations? Hopefully to change their behavior, correct? 173,000 citation backlog in the justice court system. Not having consequences for your actions. So you're receiving a citation, nothing occurs from it, no consequences for my action, doesn't change your behavior, which leads to this. That's my professional opinion. We have to be aware of it. So am I displacing the blame? Am I placing it to where it should be? No. What I'm asking you to be is aware, so when you're talking to members of the community, make them aware so they can get on the phone and call the county and the system and say, fix this, because we're all suffering for it. Yes, they've gone through the issues associated with COVID like everybody else, but we got to figure out a different way of doing business so we're not all beating our head against the wall trying to solve the problem. Community partners. Building trust. Why the hell we got to do that? I always like these pictures, they're really cool. I didn't know we saved 300 roosters, by the way. I hadn't seen that video. Does the lady on the right of me there, on my left, look pissed off? Do you know who that lady is? That's her right there with that has that answer all the questions. So Dora is a member of the MMAC. She's a member of the community. She's been a businesswoman, social activist. She's probably the loudest critical person associated with MMAC. She has taken us twofold forward as an organization in our success in this, rebuilding trust. She is, so this picture here is a press conference on the heels of the George Floyd protests, correct? And the angst that everybody had in the community with the protests going on all around town and the destruction and the anti-police rhetoric. She, along with Mujahid and the rest of the people in the picture there, and Richard Meltzer and Rokai and Pastor Cherry, Pastor Troy Martinez, and then the youth group there in the picture. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Peter Guzman. We thought it would appropriate to talk to the public and calm them of their fears, and also ask for support of the public in what we're trying to achieve as a law enforcement agency. And I believe it was very successful, because the response, the attitude of the community in the long term versus the short term, as a result of that, we were a different community as compared to the rest of the United States. And we didn't have the long-term issues that you are seeing in different jurisdictions such as Seattle and San Francisco and Baltimore. You guys all know the cities, but it's important for us to realize this is a different way of doing business, and for us to realize this is how we have to do business in perpetuity into the future for us to be successful. It's a force multiplier. We don't have enough resources to address all the issues on our own. You know, you've heard that proverbial, you can't arrest your way out of the problem. You can in some kinds of crimes like domestic violence, but other things you can't. It becomes more of a social and a trust issue, reference success. And another thing about Dora, I will challenge anybody in this room against her knowledge of the policy manual. She is a pain in the ass, man. So it's very important. So as a matter of practice, and for today's presentation, and I can't let you see it, it's too small of a print and everything, I had Chuck Calloway's office put together a pretty comprehensive list of all our community-based programs out of every area command and what we're doing as a department. And as you know, it's not a boilerplate. We let the captains have autonomy in designing what community programs they want for their particular area command, for what particular culture is predominant in their area command, and what people's interests are in those area command, and what would be the most beneficial program to move those communities forward. And on the average, every area command is pushing right around 20 separate programs. Does that surprise you? Does that number surprise you? It surprises the hell out of me. And I was very proud to see that. I was very proud to see that. And it's the difference between other police agencies that we don't hold at the same standard as us. It's the difference between us, the press here, and the fire department. Usually I have one of the fire chiefs here, and that's my chance to get a little stab into them, but it's why we are successful as an organization. That's why in the 87th percentile in the last poll we did, the community supports us. That's unicorns and rainbows, people. Unicorns and rainbows to have anything over 80% in any poll of support. And for us to do that, you have to be very proud of that. COVID-19, shit. Different way of doing business, right? That's me, that's my yoked up arm there. I broke the needle, so. But little levity there. You know what? I had to put COVID in the presentation because it's part of what we do on a daily basis, unfortunately, for the last 2 years, and probably what we're going to have to continue to talk about for the unknown future. You know, if you do a little research, pandemics last between 5 and 7 years on the average, and what are we into, 2.5 years? of this. So we're going to feel a little pain for a little continuance, but there's a lot of things associated with it, and that's whether you're essential, non-essential, us being asked to deal with the businesses when they're not complying with the directives, and how we personally feel about that versus what was expected as a independent, non-partial police agency, and addressing that, and then pull it in internal. You know, whether I get a vaccine or not, what am I going to do with my family? You know, the mask mandates and having to wear a mask compared to not believing in it, whether it may be. And law enforcement is the impartiality of enforcement. We have to stand independent no matter what our personal thoughts are for us to encompass equal policing and equal trust across the board. And the pandemic tested that for us, and I was very proud on a daily basis when I went amongst the community members and said, well, you guys are considered essential, and you know, yeah, no shit, yeah, we are. But I was very proud to say every one of my employees came to work on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to ensure that we had that blanket of safety and trust amongst the community members. Where are we going for now? You know, unfortunately, we lost several lives associated with the COVID. Thankfully, praise God that we haven't here recently, and the numbers are starting to diminish, and we're seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, depending on what variant decides to rear its head and how the vaccines affect that, and how we deal with it personally and as an organization. But the important piece on this, to cull it all together, is I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for what you are doing. And thank you for having a concern for the community in that space. And then, thanks, George. And then thank you, I know they got an award at the Sheriff Salutes the Badge, but the contact tracing unit and Jeff Roach and all the people that work in there, thank you for what you do and ensure that we have that continual safety for all our workmates in the work environment. And for you to know, as a group, we are considered the best practice agency in dealing with the COVID and the response to that across the board. We have set the standard. I think it's important for you to hear that. Officer-involved shootings. What has the biggest influence besides that daily interaction and that daily respect that you give the community? What has the highest, most influential influence or incident in how we are perceived by the community? Officer-involved shootings. Officer-involved shootings. Unfortunately, it is. It's the nature of the beast. Because we are painted with one big brush in law enforcement. So what occurs in Minneapolis or LA or New York in a negative light, we have to feel the pain ourselves. But we have to make sure that we are improving ourselves in that space in order that we do not have excuses for poor behavior or the sanctity of life, and we realize that and everything that goes along with it. So, officer-involved shootings. Where's Yaz? What did we go down? We went down 47%, I think it was. Last year, 10 versus 19, is that correct? Where's Carlos, is that correct? Yes. Are you answering for Carlos? He's protecting him, so. Carlos, are you awake? Okay. So, yeah, 10 versus 19, community trust. What we've been preaching for 5 years, 6 years, de-escalation, that is getting inbred into the culture. It takes a long time to change culture. Long time to change culture, especially in law enforcement. But we're listening, our troops are listening. The training paradigm associated with it is working. And we are figuring out different ways of doing business in protecting ourselves and the community as we address these individuals. What is occurring now is violence, and violence perpetrated against us as a profession. People in possession of guns and affecting, reactions to the police officers upon them doing their daily jobs. You're seeing it more often than not that suspects and criminals and crooks are not in fear of shooting at us, not in fear of retaliating towards us and what we do. And that's why the training and everything we do is so important. And we have to be aware of that so we don't overreact. All us leaders in the room have to be aware of that so our folks don't overreact to that and that fear for them. Make sure that we give them the tools for successful and that we don't go backwards in this space and we don't have those unintended shootings that we had experienced in previous years, and we are continue to be successful. When we do have a shooting, we can go in front of the press 72 hours later and say this is what happened and not have a fear of people protesting in the streets as a result of our actions. And we have to be proud of that as an agency, and we are going to continue to work forward in that space on a continual basis. Future threats. This is the state of the department. So we talked about 2021. Now we're going to talk about 2022. I have no idea what she's doing in that picture, but it looks pretty cool. It goes along with what I want to talk about, and that's, in my perception, and hopefully you see it in similar ways. Did I see Kevin Skehan? Oh, there he is. He's probably going to be one of the most important employees on our department moving into 22. And the reason why I say that, cybersecurity and cybercrime, both internally and externally, is the wave of the future. And our ability to move and adjust for it, to investigate it, and effect arrest and prosecute it, and deal with the internal threats on our own system, ransomware, and everything else that goes along with having a big business and a big operation and a big budget and ability for people to try to take advantage of that is the wave of the future. It's here already. And as a result of that, and the vision James Kilber and Skehan had in their area of responsibility, they stood up a cyber investigative task force to include the feds, and we have been very successful in investigating crimes in that space, but we're going to have to continually change along with it. The training and the cost and everything that goes along with it to ensure that we are successful, and to include everything we do on the rest of the department in addressing violent crime and investigating violent crime and all the tools that crooks use, like their cell phones and everything else and their computers, and to be able to intrude upon those devices in a timely manner for the success of prosecution. That is the threat, and that's the direction we need to be aware of that we're going to have to deal with going into the future. That's all I'll say about that. Next threat. Anybody have any idea what that is? It says the Clark County Detention Center. Yeah, we know what it is. Why is that considered a threat? Well, it's twofold. I want to talk about two things on this subject. One, the jail environment specifically, and two, recruiting. And the reason why the jail's up there, because they are being affected in the recruiting space, similar as the policing side. It's becoming tougher and tougher for us to find folks to occupy these seats. Rich provided some numbers here recently as the number of people standing in line on an average as compared to years past. Our most robust recruiting year was 2011, where we had the most people standing in line or candidates coming forward wanting to be COs and POs. Today's number is different. We've had a 40% decrease on the PO side and a 30% decrease on the CO side. What? 30% of what we were on the police. Where'd you get 70%? 70% decrease. Oh, so I read it the opposite way. See, that's why I called on him. He's a bean counter. So So we've had a 70% decrease in people standing in line on the policing side and on the correction side. So 57% decrease on people standing in line on the CO side. Why is this important? Why is this important? You have to be aware of those numbers because you are our number one recruiters. Steve was just telling me, Morris was just telling me he just got 4 young men to enter the police academy. So he's doing his job, all right? I need everybody in this room to do your job. That recruiting unit can't get it done on their own. And for us to be successful into the future in that proverbial 2 officers per 1,000 and whatever ratio we determine it is in the detention center, we have to get people standing in line. We have to get people standing in line. And a lot of this has its forces beyond our control. And that's, you know, that pendulum I keep talking about every opportunity I can where it's support, not support, support, not support. That has an effect on people standing in line. Attitude towards the community towards us has an effect on people standing in line. And for us to be successful, we have to have those appropriate ratios. So instead of being reactive to crime, we are proactive to crime and preventing what people want to do and what they do. I bring that up today because that's the threat of dealing with what we're dealing with as a law enforcement agency across the board. If you look at comparable agencies to us, they're experiencing the same issues. But more importantly, because of the support we put for our workforce through the trials and tribulations of the last 2 years, people are gravitating more towards Metro because of that support. They don't want to work in places like Seattle where there is no support, or Portland. We have to be aware of that so we can all work together and ensure that we get people to stand in line. On an average, here's an interesting stat. You don't know in the last 8 years, I like stats, but it takes right around 100 folks for us to hire 1 police officer. A lot of them don't read the details when they make application. And they go, what do you mean I can't get hired? It was only a robbery, but it was 20 years ago. So it's things like that that cause us angst in what we do. So let's move into the jail environment. Violent crime we talked about, right? How does that have an effect on violent crime? Well, it's called initial appearance. That dynamic has changed. Bail has changed. Perception of crime has changed. And I'm going to talk about the legislature here in a second because that's another threat that we're dealing with. But in the jail environment, which controls the initial appearance, and that's when an individual gets arrested, goes before a judge, and they determine whether they're going to remain in custody or not, has changed. You see in the press on a daily basis people that have 9 felonies and they're out on the street on their 10th felony. 3 strikes, you're out is gone now. Now it's, what is it, Jim? La Rochelle, 7 strikes, you're out, right? 3 strikes, you're out, went to 7 strikes, you're out. How ridiculous is that? So it's all part and parcel of being able to put people in this facility to change behavior and have people address the crimes they have committed, to answer for the crimes they have committed. But to include the jail environment, COVID. So prior to COVID, average daily population, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, but I should be pretty accurate, around 4,200 inmates. Today, 2,800. Why is that? Social distancing, dealing with COVID, getting people out that come in with COVID, and your initial appearance court. There's been a change in people's attitude on people sitting in jail. Right, wrong, or indifferent, there are some justifications for adjustments on that. You know, people lose their job if they're in jail for a minor crime that they can ask for or answer for differently. We have to be aware of that, and we have to pursue those type of solutions. But when we talk about guys being on the street with 7 felonies and out perpetuating a crime with no fear of retribution or consequences, it's a different dynamic. What happened in North Las Vegas the other day, right? 9 innocent individuals lost their lives as a result of a fatal accident of an individual who was what, a 7-time felon, I believe it was? Something close to that. Should that person even been behind the wheel of a car? Should that person who was court just recently for speeding been given a parking ticket instead of a speeding charge? That's all part of it. It's all part of it, and we have to be aware of it so we can do something about it, and we can bitch about it, that people will listen that can affect that change. Litigation. This is an environment that will bankrupt this agency. And we have to ensure that we are as proactive in training and policies and procedures in that space as we are in the policing space for us to be successful. That is a threat. Chuck, what is that? That's where Chuck spends half of his life. The Nevada State Legislature. Why is that a threat? Any idea? See, Dora's always got the right answer. She said they make stupid decisions. I'm just repeating what she said. That is not what I said. Okay, no, they make some difficult decisions. They make some flawed decisions, and they also make some good decisions. I mean, they're very important for the state government and for local government because that's where the laws are made. But what is going on in the last 2 sessions is there's been a general malaise towards crime. There's been an attitude of softening towards crime. And the proof is in the pudding. It's not just a theory, it's not just thought. It's a reality. You know, you raise the threshold between a misdemeanor and a felony and larcenies. You raise the thresholds on trafficking, you know, minor trafficking versus large trafficking, mandatory jail time versus non-mandatory jail time. I can go through a list of 100 different laws that we softened on that have unintended consequences because of lack of knowledge associated with this space, with law enforcement and what we do and the changing of criminal behavior. And it's very important, and I think it's very important that the unions are here to hear this, because they are very influential up in this building. And convincing those guys you're making a bad decision when you're changing the dynamic on how we deal with crime, because they don't know. And that's why it's important for them to be up there and preaching the word associated with fighting crime. And it's very important for people like Chuck Calloway and his group to be helped and knowledgeable along the way so we can fight the issue. For those of you who may not know, well, you know, we're the 800-pound gorilla in law enforcement in the state of Nevada, but for those of you who may not know, we here at LVMPD are the only word that they listen to in the law enforcement space. There's 17 counties in the state of Nevada. There's, I don't know how many law enforcement agencies and how many people are occupying positions within the law enforcement agencies, but they listen to us, they listen to Chuck, and they listen to our associations in that space. So it's important that we support them when they go up there and deal with it and let them know what will have a detrimental effect on our quality of life and safety in our community when we spend time there. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. So, but we're going to keep our head up and we're going to keep pushing, ensure it doesn't get worse. What the hell is this? Anybody any idea what that is? What is it? Yeah, it's the newer reality-based training facility. That's where we're moving AOST and everything associated with use of force and within a facility. This is what we've been preaching for. It's been a capital improvement plan we've been working on for several years, and those folks in the picture have been instrumental in getting us to where we need to be. And I think we're doing a ribbon cutting here, another ribbon cutting here in another month. Is that correct? We got any foundation people here? No, but yeah, we're gonna be opening those doors, I believe, in the next 30 days, and we're gonna start conducting training there. Is that right, Jamie? That's right, and then we're in the process of erecting the second facility with that, and I got my fingers crossed. I anticipate a very significant financial infusion into that process here in short order so we can complete the second phase of this facility and process. And why is it so important? It's because of what I talked about the entire day today. Use of force, community trust, training, de-escalation, how do we fight crime, everything that goes along with a successful organization, especially law enforcement, it can be conducted in a professional, opportune space for us to be forward-leaning in what we do as a police agency. And the fact that we partnered with the community versus going through the traditional procurement process of government, which is slow as molasses, we were able to put it on an expedited timeline, and I anticipate we're going to have success associated with that. And the most important piece is maybe I'll get my name on the building. So, hint, hint. So, all right, guys. I believe that's the last slide. End up on a high note. Hopefully I didn't bring you down in what we're looking forward to. But as an organization, we have to be aware of what we're getting ourselves into. We have to be aware of where we came from so we can build on our success and not repeat the mistakes. And that is the purpose of this today. So everybody's aware and we can all speak with one voice and have an understanding of what the hell's going on around here and what direction I desire this department to go, what direction we should go as a law enforcement agency, and be aware of what the threats are that's going to hinder or put hurdles in our way in dealing with what we do as a profession. So hopefully that gave you some insight. Hopefully it makes you feel better about what's going on out there versus 2021. I mean, you could flip that year off, all right? You can tell them to get lost in that year because we're moving forward. And the sun is shining. We're starting to hire. The budget, the revenue streams are changing. We're starting to get our revenue back to where we are, and we're moving forward. We're able to fund some programs that we thought were instrumental or are going to continue to be instrumental in our success. And so there's a lot of bright things to look forward to, a lot of bright things to look forward to as an agency. And more importantly, thank you. I'm gonna miss you guys, man. So please, oh, there you go. So please come over and say hi to me. Because this, unfortunately it takes an event like this to get a lot of people in one room, and I don't get to see you throughout the year. So if I haven't seen you in a while, or you don't think you're gonna see me in a while, please come over and say hi to me. And I would be remiss if I didn't let everybody know that today is Fred Meyer's last day, so let's give him a round of applause. So thank you, everyone.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.